All right, so number 21 is our camping and storage of personal property ordinance.
Good evening, Mayor, council members.
Hello.
Just want to take a quick second to introduce our homeless liaison coordinator for the Yuba City Police Department as approved by the council last year in the budget. I told him that he would be up here in take about 15, 20 minutes to get to him, and they would have no work to do when he got here. So he's already had to facilitate a name exchange for an accident in the parking lot. And 4 hours later, this is Officer Troy Koski. He's been a police officer for over 25 years now. He came over from Marysville Police Department in 2015, and he's very excited to partake in this new endeavor. And we're excited to have him. He's got a great background. He used to have a small business in Yuba City, so he's got a lot of experience working with community-oriented projects. So, Troy, thank you. Troy, you want to say something? I told him he wouldn't have to.
Right.
Sounds like your interview.
You're hired. You're hired.
All right. The subject before you today is the camping and storage of personal property ordinance. The recommendation is conduct a public hearing and after consideration, introduce an ordinance adding Chapter 5.23, camping and storage of personal property on private and public property to Title 5 of the Yuba City Municipal Code and waive the first reading. Over the last few years in Southern Yuba County, as in other jurisdictions throughout California and the United States, there's been a significant increase in the unauthorized camping and storage of personal property, both on public and private land. In Sutter County, the increase of unauthorized camping and storage of personal property near waterways and levees have proven to be problematic. Historically, Sutter and Yuba County have had different attacks, individual on how we approach this to a law enforcement and make sure that we're balancing that with protecting everybody's constitutional rights and understanding that people aren't out there just because it could be a life situation. So we want to make sure that we balance all that and offer the help that we can that's available and that they're willing to take. So this specifically talks about camping only. We have not had consistent ordinances specifically addressing locations where and times when camping and storage of personal property on public and private property is allowed and where it's prohibited. A clear, understandable ordinance regulating camping and storage of personal property is a direct and effective way to resolve the issues. So we're kind of doing this in conjunction with all the different law enforcement and different cities and municipal organizations in Yuba and Sutter County. So we have the same basic ordinance. The City of Yuba City has partnered with neighboring jurisdictions, various nonprofit and faith-based organizations to enhance and coordinate all aspects of intervention activities and enforcement response to the hazardous conditions created by unpermitted camping and storage of personal property in areas that are not appropriate or safe to conduct those activities. In creating a more uniform approach, it became clear that a specific ordinance was needed to ensure our process complied with the state laws while retaining the necessary flexibility for a regional solution. The analysis, basically, the proposed ordinance creates reasonable regulations that applies to all citizens that camp or store personal property within the incorporated areas of Yuba City. The overall purpose of this ordinance is to preserve the rights of all citizens within the city so as to maintain certain areas of land for the purpose for which they are intended to be used, to maintain the integrity of the levee system that protects Yuba City's residents, businesses, and environment, protect the health of riparian habitats and waterways, as well as to protect the rights of individuals that may be subject to personal property removal. The proposed ordinance is being implemented across Yuba and Sutter County law enforcement jurisdictions to create a uniform policy. We're actually the fourth agency, I believe, to do this. Yuba County, Sutter County, and Marysville have all gone first, and this are in different stages of implementing the ordinance. The proposed ordinance provides specific rules related to areas of the city that are not safe to camp, and specifically in areas that are designated as floodways or in areas that are within the water side of our levees. It places reasonable restrictions on where people may store their personal belongings. It provides for specific noticing and time requirements for individuals that are violating the ordinance, as well as uniform procedures for removal of personal property, including the personal property storage, recovery, and disposal. The process includes provisions for an informal hearing so that the individuals have the ability to exercise their right to appeal the determination that their property is creating an environmental hazardous condition. The proposed ordinance was developed in consultation with Yuba County. And the fiscal impact at this time is unknown. There will be some cost to store the property, probably a Connex box, a location to place it in, somebody to work at designated areas to release the property and to make sure that it's maintained in a safe condition. And also the costs with collecting individual camping sites that may present a violation of this ordinance. The alternatives are provide direction to staff as to change which should be incorporated into the ordinance. I'll read that over because that was kind of blurred. Is to provide direction to staff as to any changes which should be incorporated into the ordinance or take no action on the ordinance. The recommendation is conduct a public hearing and after consideration, introduce an ordinance adding Chapter 5.23 camping and storage of personal property on private and public property to Title 5, which is public welfare, morals, and conduct of the Yuba City Municipal Code, waiving the first reading. And with that, I'll open it up to the public hearing and for questions.
All right, we'll go ahead and open public hearing. Thanks, Rob. Anybody care to comment? Are you Miss Gill, or is there Simon Gill, or excuse me, Laura?
I'm Laura.
Laura, read the wrong card.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Laura Clausen-Furry, and I'm with California Rural Legal Assistance. We represent clients with regard to the proposed ordinance. We believe that it is unlawful under Boise because it is drafted to essentially encompass all property and make camping illegal within the city limits. And as you know, there are insufficient shelter beds for folks who are currently homeless. Second, we believe that even if there is an area that is not completely prohibited by the broad prohibitions contained in the proposed ordinance, that Section 060's requirement that you set up camp in the dark and take down your camp every morning is unlawful as applied to physically disabled individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else care to comment? Chief? Oh, okay, I thought you were coming to comment.
Oh, I don't want to comment.
You don't want to comment? All right. All right, with that, no one else stepping up, I'll close public hearing, bring it back to council for action or comment.
Through the mayor,
Yes, sir.
I just want to let this folks know here in the community that all 5 jurisdictions is doing this ordinance. We're all on the same page. We're not here to offend anybody. Excuse me. We're not here to offend anybody. We just want to make sure that we're going to help them. We're going to send them to the proper places to get them from being homeless and get them on their own. So I just want to let everybody know that. And all 5 jurisdictions are all in on this. They're not different. It's all one. So I just want to let everybody know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Through the mayor, unless there's other comments, I'm ready to make a motion.
I did have a comment. I wanted to check with our city attorney because of the rulings that just occurred on Monday and how this changes possibly some of the guidelines within this ordinance, and understanding the need for the person rest and beds. So how is this, are we okay as a council, or is this going to get us into some potential issues?
There's an old joke among city attorneys. You never ask the city attorney to give you a legal opinion in a public forum as to whether or not you're going to win or lose on something. So that may not be the circumstance.
I just did.
Thank you, Councilwoman. This ordinance was put together by the county of
Yuba County.
Yuba County.
Yeah.
And it was done in light of the 9th District's decision, the appellate court's decision in Boise. And so it was designed to comply with Boise. Now, one of the things that we were hoping to get some clarification from the Supreme Court on is there was a lot of gray area created in Boise. We believe that as drafted, that it complies with Boise, but Boise court was pretty vague as to what they were doing. So there's a lot of different room for interpretation, and while we would have hoped the Supreme Court would have chimed in and helped provide that clarification, we don't have the benefit of it. Neither does anyone else. The one thing that I would say, however, as with any ordinance that we have, whether it's walking across a crosswalk within a certain period of time or doing these other sorts of things, our police officers, when they see somebody with disability, give them a reasonable accommodation so that they can complete their actions. And that's the training that they have, that's their policy that they have. So you could almost have any ordinance that would be, as they would call, as applied, could be misapplied. That's not the case here. If the police department are giving a reasonable accommodation to somebody that has a medical condition or other condition, then that's, at least from my perspective, from what I've seen so far, would not be an issue.
So a follow-up to that, I want to know with the Ninth Circuit Court, because I want to be clear that this is talking about public domain. Private, it's still not legal to do it on private property.
The ordinance provides for a mechanism that, yes, the Boise case says it applies just to public property.
Correct.
So private property can still be restricted. And this ordinance does provide for a mechanism for restricting camping on private property. It says if you're going to camp on private property, you've got to be able to show certain things so our enforcement personnel know that you're authorized to be there and you're not just trespassing and being at that location.
So thank you for clarifying that. I just wanted to make sure that the general public understands that this is what this ordinance covers. And we're working really hard with our county and jurisdictions to have the appropriate shelter when potentially there needs to be some sort of relocation, if that is the case, that's best for the community.
And yes, and as the chief pointed out, this also applies to certain public private property as well. For example, the levees. When people are boring into the levees and creating these permanent structure in the levees, that weakens the integrity of the levees during a flood situation. And so there's going to be certain public property that's going to have a higher level of scrutiny to make sure that it doesn't jeopardize the safety of everyone, which is part of what this ordinance does as well.
And I think that that's why it's important, the coordination that is on a regional level, because homeless individuals do not stay usually in one particular area, but there is a tendency to have a higher density perhaps in the river area, the river bottoms, and those kinds of locations in our communities. So I thank you that you brought this ordinance to us and that we have a new officer or a staff person, I would say, from our police department that is helping with this transition and how it's being coordinated on a regional level.
Thank you. I'd like to add also that we are going to make sure that all the resources that are available are made known to everybody that is homeless or in a camping situation where they're looking for stuff. We're just trying to develop a better resource for that right now as far as pamphlets and stuff to make sure we're getting the word out as well.
Yes, Chief, and I would recommend that with Sutter County, they have tremendous, they have pamphlets and at the coordinated entry locations, and I'm sure Troy will get into that with the coordinated entry locations and get the resources to be able to know exactly where to make some recommendations as you're finding individuals that are, in that transition area. See, he's already being handed off some over there, getting them ready to go. But that's all, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, through the mayor.
Yes.
Chief, first of all, thank you for bringing this and thank you for working with our neighbors and being in one unified front with this. I would ask one more thing before I make a motion here is with our liaison officer, if we could educate our business owners and private property owners here as well, because I have talked to many of them in the community, and because of Boise and because of things that's been done, a lot of them feel like they have no rights, and they honestly do have more rights than the people that are illegally camping on their doorsteps and on their private property. So if we could incorporate that as part of our outreach, that would be most appreciative. And with that, I move to introduce an ordinance adding Chapter 5.23, Camping and Storage of Personal Property on Private and Public Property, to Title 5, Public Welfare, Morals, and Conduct of the Yuba City Municipal Code, and waive the first reading.
Second.
First and second to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? None. Thank you very much, Chief. Congratulations, Troy.